All right. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Jaclyn. I'm super happy to have you. Hello, if you are joining us on Facebook. This is our guest speaker tonight, Jaclyn. Jaclyn owns a nutrition coaching company, and they focus on performance-based fat loss. Isn't that like the name of your business?
It's like our method. It's what we call it. Yeah, it's not necessarily our business. Our business name is JS Strength and Conditioning, but our method is performance-based fat loss.
That's so awesome. Cool. So anyhow, Jaclyn's going to coming in tonight to join us, and she's going to speak on performance-based fat loss. So I know for a lot of people, that's something that you're interested in. You've been working out for a while. You're training hard. You're not really seeing those results that you want to see. And I think what Jaclyn has to share with us might be super valuable in regards to why that might be happening for you. So thanks for joining us tonight, Jaclyn. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us.
No problem. I love doing these kinds of trainings. So hello, everybody. My name's Jaclyn. I've been coaching for a long time now, but I'll give you guys a bit of a backstory on why we chose to go down this route with our clientele. So I myself, I used to compete in jump rope, believe it or not, but once I hung up jump rope, I ended up getting really involved with weight training, with CrossFit, which eventually led to a passion for Olympic weightlifting. So for those of you guys that are close to the sport, a big part of competing in weightlifting is being tied to a weight class, right? So I have to cut down to a weight class, and my main focus when cutting down is to maintain as much strength as possible. So I really, really enjoy, I mean, I've been competing for 5 years. I'm taking a year off from competing, but I really do enjoy the whole realm of cutting athletes down and watching them still perform at their best while losing body fat. So those are like the main clients that we work with. But from what I understand, Clarissa said that there's a bunch of you guys in this group that are still like going really, really hard in the gym, exercising more, not necessarily fueling enough, and you're not seeing the results that you want. So I wanted to start off like a little bit with why that is, right? There's probably a bunch of you in here who are like, you know, working out so hard. You're not, you know, you're cutting your calories back and wondering why like body comp and performance aren't changing. So Clarissa might have touched on it, but before we get into the details of like how we achieve performance-based fat loss, I want to talk about like why that's a problem, right? So if we're not eating enough, right, our body perceives it as a threat, right? So our body's going to fight that at all costs. It's going to fight weight loss at all costs, right? So there's not eating enough, and there's exercising too much. So when we don't eat enough, we have stress, which increases. And when we exercise too much as you guys think that exercise is not a stressor, it's a stressor. When we burn the candle at both ends, our body perceives all of this stress, and the last thing it wants to do is lose weight, right? Like I said, it perceives it as a threat. So there's so much stress in our body that the only way for your body to survive is to basically hold on to all of this weight, right? But we think the only way that we can really push through that plateau is to work harder in the gym, to keep cutting more calories in hopes that something will change, when in reality, it's actually creating more of a problem than it is solving one, right? Because you're going to keep digging this hole deeper and deeper. And the deeper the hole gets with all the stress that's, you know, occurring, the longer it's going to take for you to get pulled out of that hole, right? So performance is something that suffers in the gym, right? A lot of people just start to normalize their performance suffering, or even like nagging injuries, right? You have an injury that's nagging, you just kind of like swipe it under the rug. And then for those of you guys that do like HIIT or CrossFit, you know, you have a really hard time getting into that second gear, but you just normalize it, right? Like, I'm tired all the time. I have kids, I'm busy, right? Like, it's just a normal part of life, but we have to stop normalizing those things, right? This is where like major sacrifices are being made. So again, for those of you guys that are in that position where you're just like scratching your head and wondering why you're struggling to see PRs in the gym or body comp isn't changing, eating too little and exercising harder, like we call it burning the candle at both ends, is actually driving you further and further away from that goal. So I want to talk about like the 5 things that we focus on inside of our program, how we help clients still be able to achieve fat loss while hitting PRs in the gym. And I can speak to my experience from this because I've gone through, in the last 5 years, probably 12 to 14 weight cuts, which is quite crazy. But for most of those, I mean, when I first started, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was able to maintain and actually build strength, and there's an art to this. So 5 things I want to teach you guys tonight. The first one is the importance of maintenance calories. I'm not sure if Clarissa has touched on this in the group. She might have, but we have to make sure that we're eating enough, right, before we start tackling fat loss. So for those of you guys that are not familiar with this term, but it's basically the amount of food that you need to sustain your current weight to maintain activity levels, daily stressors, lifestyle, etc. And this is going to vary for everyone, right? Based on a lot of factors: age, height, weight, occupation, diet history, hormone profile, etc. But this is where a lot of those fad diets that you guys follow go wrong, right? There's not really any concept of maintenance. It's just like, let's cut calories and get as low as we can in order to lose weight, right? So we have to build our metabolism up, or build our calories up to some degree before we start cutting calories back, right? And for our athletes, like, this is that like buffer. Okay, we're getting them ready, like, hey, you have a huge competition coming up in months to come. We have to make sure that you're consuming enough so that by the time we cut calories backwards, you're eating a sufficient amount of food and you don't really feel like you're dieting, right? So the more we push this threshold, this metabolic threshold, right, like the further we push it up, the more of an advantage we have when it comes to being in a calorie deficit. Okay. I think the most I ever ate myself personally was like 2,400 calories. This was like 2 or 3 years ago. I just kept pushing my metabolism as far as I could. I'm a small person. I'm like 135. And I had such an amazing fat loss phase following that. I think I was eating 2,000 calories and still losing weight. And I was eating like Dairy Queen and ice cream and pizza, like literally leading up to my meet day, which is like unheard of. So guys, the importance of that maintenance, like building that foundation and that buffer, is so important if you are looking to tackle fat loss long-term, okay? So that's number 1, making sure that you're eating enough, or like building your calorie maintenance up. The second part to this is being put inside of a proper calorie deficit. And I know like all these terms and these things that I'm pointing out to you guys, like obviously it's going to be difficult to do on your own. But I'm just speaking like in broad terms here. And this is where like, you could probably pick Clarissa's brain a little bit on how to do this, or even reach out to her for some help. So number 2 is a proper calorie deficit, right? So what I mean by this is when you guys are cutting calories back and trying to achieve weight loss, it can't be super drastic. It actually has to be pretty gradual. So really quickly, the way that we tackle this with our clients is like, I'd say like a 10 to 15% drop in calories in the beginning. And then from there, it's very gradual, right? It's not like we just keep chopping calories down. The reason why we do this is to make sure, again, they're still sustaining as much strength as possible, or maintaining as much strength as possible, as much muscle mass, as possible, because we have to remember, we still have to make sure these athletes of ours are still performing well and recovering properly, right? So if we go too hard, too quickly, that's all going to start to decline. So slow and gradual, like I said, 10 to 15% off the bat. And then from there, it's very, very gradual, right? We reassess every 7 to 10 days to see how they're doing. We look at things like their biofeedback, right? How are they performing? What is their stress levels like? How is their sleep? How are they recovering? What kind of training are they doing, right? Is it high intensity? Is it CrossFit? Is it weightlifting? We want to make sure that, we're still fueling them enough to some degree so that their performance doesn't decline too quickly, okay? And this is obviously where that patience has to come into play. I know probably a lot of you guys in this group are chasing that like quick fix, wanting weight loss to occur like tomorrow, but it has to be done slowly and gradually so that we can maintain, like I said, strength and performance, but also make sure that we can keep the weight off long-term, okay? So that's number 2. Number 3, we want to make sure that protein and carbohydrates are sufficient, right? So protein obviously helps us build lean muscle. It helps keeps us satiated in between meals. It helps increase our metabolism. There are a lot of benefits for protein, but we want to make sure that there's a sufficient amount of protein so that, again, the athlete is still able to maintain strength. That's like the number 1 focus. You guys have heard me say this multiple times. we got to make sure that they're eating a sufficient amount of protein. So targets, you know, can range anywhere between 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound body weight. If you're someone that's training a lot, you know, like 5+ days a week, you are someone that's pretty competitive. If you're someone that's looking to gain, you should be on that higher level of the 1.2 grams per pound body weight. But if you're someone that's looking to achieve weight loss or fat loss, it should be goal weight, or for our athletes, it's usually like in and around the weight that they're at. You know, they're usually looking to lose like anywhere between 5 to 10 pounds. So where they're at in terms of weight is sufficient enough. Carbs, extremely important for performance. If you are someone that does HIIT training or CrossFit, you need carbohydrates, right? CrossFit and HIIT, like high intensity exercise, is so hard on the central nervous system. And the only way to recover from that is via carbs, right? So I'm sure a lot of you guys in here have been doing the complete opposite, right? You're probably under eating carbs or not eating enough carbs, but still going super hard in the gym, doing, you know, your WODs or tackling HIIT, and you're wondering why you're crashing or you're so tired, you're not recovering. Well, it's probably because you're not fueling enough with carbohydrate, right? You guys know carbs have always got a really bad rap, but it's really important that you guys do fuel enough via carbohydrate. So this will absolutely help bring those stress levels down. Remember in the beginning, we talked about how exercise is a stressor, right? When we exercise, cortisol levels increase. The purpose of eating carbohydrates post-workout is to bring the cortisol levels down. And if we're not doing that, guess what's going to stay elevated, right? Is our cortisol or our stress hormone. So again, this speaks to those of you guys that are not eating carbs. You want to make sure that you're eating enough carbohydrates to help with performance and recovery, right? That's a huge one for our clients. The fourth thing, and I know a lot of you guys in this group too can probably speak to this, is rest days, right? We have to make sure that you guys are taking enough rest days. Again, this goes back to stress. You guys are probably starting to notice a theme here, but if we are going too hard in the gym, plus we're not eating enough, our stress is going to stay elevated, right? And if we are not taking enough rest days, we're not giving our body enough time to recover. So rest days are really important. It's definitely hard for our clients, especially those that are in competition mode, because they are stuck to a very strict schedule. And there's times where in their programming, they're reaching times of peaking, which is when like we're trying to get them to PR or lift as much as possible. Again, competition time is also like a peak time. And the next point I'm going to talk about is a specialty protocol, or are some specialty protocols that we use to help offset the negative effects of being in a calorie deficit. So guys, rest days are really important. It really is one of the most underrated aspects of a fat loss transformation, like recovery or resting, because it all comes back down to that stress, right? If you're, again, too much exercise, not eating enough, you've got too much stress like in your life, right? From family, work, just daily stressors that we endure on a daily basis. If you're not sleeping enough, right? If you're not getting like 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, this bucket of stress that we all carry is just going to get full, more and more full, right? It's never really going to empty. And that's a huge reason why a lot of people hit a plateau with weight loss, or again, performance just kind of goes out the window. So we speak to a lot of this inside of our program for our athletes, you know, yoga, active rest days, stretching out. Sometimes we feed them more food, which we're going to get into. I'm getting ahead of myself, on their rest days to help with recovery. But this is like really important to make sure that you're continuing to see progress in the gym. Okay. And another point on this too, like if you guys wake up and you feel like you got hit by a transport truck, for those of you guys that CrossFit or do again HIIT, probably a good indication that you should take a rest day. But I know it's hard because we're like, oh my God, if I don't do something today, like my progress is going to slow down. It's really not. It's going to, if anything, just help accelerate those results. And we've seen this time and time and again with our clients, especially the ones that are hardcore into CrossFit. You know, as soon as they start to feel the negative effects of a calorie deficit, we recommend that they take an extra rest day. And believe it or not, their results just start to skyrocket, right? Because their body's recovering, stress is coming down. I know it sounds like the complete opposite of what you'd imagine, but I promise you it works. I can tell a little story about this actually. How much time do we have, Clarissa? Do we have a full half hour?
Yeah.
Okay. I will tell this story because I like to come back to it, just about rest days. So last year I was competing, or I was training, I should say, for nationals, like the Canadian national competition. I was really stressed. I was in a calorie deficit. I was training really, really hard, like reaching peak performance. And I knew in the back of my head, like, this is not a good idea. I should probably back off something, like something's got to give. But I didn't listen to my body, and I ended up one day with a pinched nerve. Just came out of nowhere. I was sitting at my desk just like this, typing, and all of a sudden I had this crazy pain that just started to get bigger and bigger in my neck. And I got to the point where I couldn't walk for a good 5-6 days. If you guys have ever had a pinched nerve in your neck, it's like the worst pain possible. But that was my body telling me that hey, you have to slow down. And I was in the thick of a weight cut, right? So reached out to my coach and I was like, this is happening. She's like, cool, you're not training at all. And obviously there was me who was stressed about the amount of food I was eating. Oh my God, I'm still eating all this food. I'm not working out. Was there any way that we're going to cut food? And she's like, no, you're still eating all of your carbs. I think that's when I was eating the 2000 calories. We're not cutting any food because your body's you're injured. You have to recover. And she gave me some strategies on how to get my food in, even though I wasn't hungry. But kid you not, guess what started to move down? My weight, right? Because I was recovering. I wasn't training like crazy. I was obviously I couldn't work out, I think, for about 7 days. I think my first workout back was pushing an empty sled, which I wasn't happy about. But it was crazy to see that my weight was it hit a plateau. And as soon as that injury took place, it just started to drop. So you guys never want to get to that point, and I'm kind of going on to change it with rest days, but you want to make sure that you're being proactive instead of reactive, especially if you are someone that is competitive. Those rest days are so important. Number 5. So this is the specialty protocols I was speaking to. One thing that we're really big on in our program is these kind of go hand in hand. Diet breaks, refeed days, or what we do in our program is called carb cycling. So this works really well for our athletes as well. We'll start with a refeed day. So a refeed day is basically giving somebody more calories than what they're consuming in a calorie deficit. For most of our clients, we would just bump their carbs up by 50%. So for math purposes, if someone was eating 100 grams of carbs, we would give them 150. Right, for the refeed day. So this just gives them more calories, mainly to recover, but in some cases to perform, right? If we know that they're having a big lift coming up, or if they're feeling the effects of a cut, right? Biofeedback starting to decline and they're just feeling really fatigued. Another big one is cravings, right? When we're in a deficit, we have those cravings that set in. We will give a client a refeed day to offset those negative effects. And in some cases, what we've seen too with this is that the weight will drop a pound or 2 the day after, which is pretty wild. But again, it goes back to that whole recovery conversation. So refeed days, we kind of take those, we play it by ear. We also do diet breaks, right? Depending on where a client is at in their journey. Obviously, if we're getting really close to a meet day and they have to meet a specific weight, we have to eliminate those. But if someone does have some flexibility and they're making weight at a good pace, we will give them a day off, a weekend off of tracking, just for mental purposes, right? Because you reach that wall, you hit that fatigue with tracking, and it just helps with compliance. And then carb cycling is another protocol that we use. That's where we take someone's full calorie intake for the week, and we basically create a couple of low calorie days and high calorie days. So for most of our clients, we factor in 2 maintenance days. So what we talked about in the beginning, they're eating at maintenance. Let's say it's 2000 for 2 days of the week. And if they were in a calorie deficit at 1400, it would be the other 5 days of the week. So we like to break that up and do 3 low days, 1 high, depending on how many high days they get. And again, this helps a ton with compliance. It helps with cravings, performance and recovery as well. So those are just some protocols that we throw into our program to help with the effects, negative effects, I should say, of a deficit. So we've been doing this now for like 7 years. We really just niche down into performance-based fat loss, but all of our clients that have worked with us have seen major success. I was talking to Clarissa before this about like how we do weight cuts closer to comp day, because it's like a whole other ball game. But the main thing that we do for them is like water cutting, which is like a whole other conversation. But again, for those of you guys that just like do CrossFit, you might be a power lifter or someone that does like competitive weightlifting. But again, those that just do HIIT and you're looking to improve your performance and make gains in the gym, you guys have to make sure that you're putting these protocols in place. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to see progress, right? We never want it to be one-sided. It's not like, okay, if I lose weight, I have to sacrifice my performance in the gym. That's not what we want, right? Like when we achieve fat loss, we want to have it all, right? Obviously, like there is a consequence or a risk of performance declining, but if we implement these things properly, we really shouldn't see any drastic changes. Sorry, that was like the longest I've talked in a while.
But it makes perfect sense. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Is so similar to what we do, and we're not working, with high-end athletes. It's just it works, and it works really, really well. So we just
sure. Yeah, I figured like that you'd obviously resonate with like most of what I spoke about.
Absolutely, 1000%. I had a question though.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of people on Facebook, so if you have a question, go ahead and pop them in the chat. We'll get to that. But when you were talking about maintenance calories, and like you and I know that maintenance calories are usually a pretty big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what would you say if someone came in and they told you that their maintenance calories were like 1400?
Oh, I would ask where they got that from first. Was it like a reputable source? Did we get it from like an online calculator? Was it done by like someone that knows what they're doing? I would 100% ask them first and foremost where they got that information. And then I would personally, as a coach, do my own calculations based off the information that they give me and compare to see like, okay, where's the gap here? Because it depends, right? Like, cause some people, like if you're 4 foot nothing and you're like 110 pounds, like it could, and you sit at a desk all day, like it could be.
Maybe. Generally not.
But, yeah, no.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like if someone is saying that, then they probably got it from like MyFitnessPal or a generic calculator.
That's true. And I think a lot of it comes from too, dieting over the years and then eating that amount of calories and not seeing any change.
Yes, that's actually a good point. So like, yeah, so you're speaking to someone that's been eating that much food, weight's not changing. So they're like, oh, okay, like this makes sense. But no, that's not the case at all whatsoever. And it's scary, right? Like, the first thing people think of when they eat more food is that they're going to gain weight. But in reality, guys, like we've worked with a lot of clients who have, and I'm sure you have too, Clarissa, have dieted for years and years and years and years. The longer you stay where you're currently at, if you are someone that's under consuming, the longer it's going to take you to get to where you want to be. Like I always like to say that, right? Because you're basically taking a hammer to your metabolism and you're just like hammering it in and day out, right? That's the analogy I use. It creates a clear picture. So yeah, I would say that's incorrect. Unless you're like 4 foot nothing and weigh 100 pounds, then that is 100% incorrect. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you were speaking on performance, like in CrossFit and like you work with the higher performance athletes. But I know we have a lot of women in our group that run, and that's just as important to fuel with the carbohydrates too.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you are someone that does run, like that's the one of the first things that your body's going to be that your body's going to need essentially is carbohydrates, right? So running and not necessarily fueling properly. I mean, I can also speak to this from my own experience because I unfortunately had an eating disorder when I was younger, but I remember I like wasted away basically. Like I got down to like a really low weight. I lost a whole bunch of muscle mass because I was eating 1,400 calories a day. I was doing CrossFit. I was sprinting every day, and I had a gym membership at like a Globo gym. So like I was like a exercise machine. And I'll tell you guys this right now, like if you're not fueling enough to support that amount of activity, you'll start to like your muscle mass will start to just go. I saw it. It was crazy. And then I started to like back off of running so much and eat more food, carbs, protein, and gain 20 pounds in 2 years. And here I am today, just still maintaining that and changing body comp. So yes, it is important for sure.
That's awesome. I didn't know you had an eating disorder too.
I did, yeah, in high school. It was really bad. And then I got help. It was like a spiral. Like I got help. I gained all this weight, hated how I looked, lost it all. Like I went up to like I was like 100 pounds, went up to 140, lost all of it. I got down to like 110 pounds. But like I wanted to be muscular, but I was so skinny. I was like, why, right? Like you think doing all this exercise and eating less is going to make you muscular. But like, I remember being like, wait a second, if I want to build and gain mass, what I'm doing is not working, right? And the crazy thing too about that was I gained, this is for all of you guys, like just speaking to my metabolism, I gained 20 pounds on 2,000 calories back then. I now lose weight on 2,000 calories, which is wild, right? It's wild because I went back and looked at my old emails from my coach when I worked with her like 7 years ago, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, like 2,000 calories to me back then was so much food. Now it's just like I know, you know, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's crazy. Crazy. Yeah.
It's super crazy. Our body is so cool. We have super similar stories. That's crazy. I had no idea.
Do you? I didn't know. Like, I didn't know that you had an eating disorder either.
Yeah. Like in my high school years, God, yeah, it was kind of a mess. I went down to like 70 some pounds. Like I was horribly unhealthy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I've been this tall for all of, since high school. So yes, I was very unhealthy, but then I got help and got that turned around and went up to 140, which is really weird. And then over time, I brought myself back down and I stayed at 108. I'd have a baby, go back to 108, like for years and years and years.
Wow.
And then I, ventured into this fitness area because that was something that was new for me. And I didn't want to eat more, but I had to eat more because I was falling on my face. But then I got really frustrated with my results because I wasn't building muscle like I wanted to. And that is actually the piece and why I had the CPT, but that's why I started pursuing nutrition, because I was like, there's something wrong. There's a missing piece. Yeah. And so then it was like, let's consume all the nutrition certifications I could find and I'll fix myself.
I love that. Well, yeah, our stories are like very similar then, because it was the same, right? Like I joined CrossFit and I was like, I want to look like these girls that are like built like, brick shit houses. I don't know if swearing's allowed, but I'm like a third of them, right? Like, and then it all made sense. That's so cool. Very interesting. Yeah, they parallel quite nice. Yeah. Very cool.
Well, thanks for sharing that. We've got a lot of people on Facebook, but no questions at all.
No worries.
Yeah. So anyhow, I guess we can kind of wrap up. Thank you for joining us. And if you're on Facebook, thank you for joining us tonight too. I hope you found some value here. Jaclyn shared some really awesome things, I think, and I hope you can walk away with something that is applicable right away. And if not, just reach out. You guys know I'm always here. But thanks again for joining us, Jaclyn. I really enjoyed it.
No problem. Amazing.
That we have similar stories. That's cool.
That is so cool. I learned something new today. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Clarissa. And I'm sure we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.